Long ago, in the heart of a vast and merciless desert, there lived a small bird whose existence felt like a mistake. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, a sea of burning sand under a sky that showed no mercy. The sun rose every morning like an enemy, pouring fire onto the land, and when night came, the cold cut just as deeply. In this place, survival itself was a battle. The bird had no feathers to protect her fragile body. Her skin was exposed to the sun's cruelty by day and the freezing winds by night. She had no nest, no shade, no food, no water. There were no trees to rest in, no companions to comfort her. Only silence, heat, hunger, and pain. Day after day, she dragged herself across the sand, each step heavier than the last, her small heart weighed down by despair. Every morning when the sun rose and the heat began to burn her skin, she looked up at the empty sky and cried out, asking why she had been born this way. She wondered what sin she had committed to deserve such suffering. And every night, when the cold wrapped around her trembling body, she lay on the sand, cursing her fate and wishing for everything to end. Life felt cruel. Existence felt meaningless. Hope felt like a lie told to others, never meant for her. One afternoon, as the bird lay motionless on the burning ground, her breath was shallow and weak, she noticed something extraordinary. High above her, cutting through the endless blue sky, flew a magnificent swan. Her wings were wide and brilliant white. Her movements were calm, graceful, effortless. She seemed untouched by the suffering below, as if she belonged to a different world entirely. With the last strength she had, the little bird lifted her head and cried out, asking the swan to wait, asking where she was going. The sound of her voice was faint, almost lost in the wind, but the swan heard it. She circled back and descended gently, landing beside the broken bird. Up close, she saw the full weight of her suffering, the bare skin, the shaking body, the eyes filled with quiet agony. The swan spoke softly and said she was flying to heaven. At those words, something stirred inside the bird, something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Weak and fragile, but still alive. She begged the swan for a favor, asking her to speak to the gods on her behalf. She asked only one question: when would her suffering end? She said she could endure almost anything if she just knew there was an end to the pain. The swan looked at her with deep compassion and promised she would ask. Then she spread her wings and disappeared into the sky, leaving the bird alone once more with the sand, the heat, and her thoughts. After many hours of flight, the swan reached the golden gates of heaven, where she met a wise and gentle God who watched over all living beings. Bowing respectfully, the swan shares the story of the small bird in the desert, living without feathers, without food, without water, her spirit slowly breaking. She asked when the bird's suffering would finally end. The God closed his eyes and looked into the threads of destiny. Time seems to be slow. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy. According to the bird's karma, she was meant to suffer for 7 more years. There could be no relief until then. This was what had been written. The swan was shocked. She pleaded, saying the bird might not survive even 1 more day if she heard such news. She begged the god to find another way. The god smiled gently and said there was one path still open. He told the swan to teach the bird a simple mantra, to be spoken with complete faith in every moment, whether joyful or painful. The words were simple. Thank you, God, for everything. Gratitude, he said, was the only message she needed. The swan bowed deeply and returned to the desert. When she arrived, she found the bird lying exactly where she had left her, barely alive. The swan told her she had returned with a message from heaven. The bird struggled to open her eyes and asked again when her suffering would end. Carefully, the swan explained the mantra and told her to repeat it with full trust, no matter what happened. Confused and weak, the bird asked again about the end of her pain, but the swan only told her to trust the words and live by them. Then she flew away, leaving the bird alone once more with the sand, the heat, and her thoughts. At first, the bird felt anger and confusion. How could she be grateful when her life was nothing but pain? What was there to thank God for when she was starving, thirsty, and alone in the desert? But she remembered the swan's promise, and with nothing else left, she began to repeat the words. When the sun burned her skin until it felt unbearable, she whispered through tears, thanking God for everything. When she collapsed on the sand, unable to move, she murmured the same words. When her throat burned with thirst and death felt close, she still managed to say thank you. And when the freezing night wrapped around her fragile body, she repeated the mantra again and again, clinging to it like a lifeline. Days passed, weeks passed. Her body became weaker, but something inside her began to change. At first, the words felt empty, mechanical, almost meaningless. But slowly they began to soften her heart. She stopped cursing her life. She stopped asking why she had been chosen to suffer. A quiet peace began to grow inside her, even as her body struggled to survive. Then came the moment that changed everything. One morning, the heat felt different. The air shifted. The bird lifted her head and saw dark clouds forming on the horizon, something she had never seen in her entire life. The sun disappeared behind them, and a cool breeze swept across the desert. Fear and wonder filled her heart. She whispered the mantra once more, thanking God for everything. Suddenly, thunder roared across the sky. The sound was loud and terrifying, yet beautiful. Then rain began to fall. At first, just a few drops, then more, then a downpour so heavy it soaked the sand and the bird's trembling body. She opened her beak and drank deeply, tears streaming down her face as joy overwhelmed her. The rain continued for hours, turning the desert into something unrecognizable. Water gathered in small pools, the ground softened. Days passed, and tiny green shoots emerged from the sand. Life awakened where none had existed before. Grass spread across the land, plants and bushes grew. Trees began to rise. Seeds that had slept beneath the desert for years finally found their moment. The bird grew stronger. Food became abundant. Soft feathers grew across her body, protecting her at last. She built a nest in a tall tree and learned to fly again, soaring above the land that had once nearly killed her. What had been a lifeless desert became a thriving paradise. And through it all, she continued to whisper her gratitude, now filled with joy and understanding. 7 months later, the swan flew over the land again and could not believe what she saw. The desert was gone. In its place was a lush world full of color and life. She found the bird healthy and radiant, singing from her nest. Shocked, the swan returned to heaven and asked the god how this was possible when she had been told the bird would suffer for 7 years. The god smiled and explained that gratitude was more powerful than karma, stronger than destiny itself. With every sincere expression of thanks, the bird had transformed her suffering. What was meant to last 7 years had been completed in 7 months. The god said gently that the bird did not wait for life to improve before being grateful. She became grateful first, and life followed. And this is the truth for us. We wait to be grateful until things get better, but gratitude is not the result of blessings. Gratitude is their creator. When you say thank you in the middle of pain, you are not surrendering. You are transforming. You are changing the direction of your life. You are not broken. You are being reshaped. So do not wait for the desert to disappear. Start planting gratitude now, because gratitude has the power to turn deserts into gardens, suffering into freedom, and pain into purpose. Thank you, God, for everything.